Okay, hello there. Welcome to the psychology department. My name's Catherine Wright. I'm the head of psychology here at Esher Sixth Form College. I've got with me a couple of students. We're just having a slight technical issue in terms of their cameras, but they can access the microphone, so they'll be able to answer some of your questions. So, as Jay said, if you can pop any questions that you have about the course in the chat, that would be great. Okay, so first questions come in, difference between psychology and sociology. Um, so I've actually got a student here with me, Daniel, who is studying both psychology and sociology. So I think he's perhaps best placed to answer. So I'm going to pass you over to Daniel. Daniel.
Yes, so in terms of the difference, in terms of content, sorry, there is quite a great difference. In sociology, we look at a lot of perspectives on why society behaves or acts in the way it does. Whereas in psychology, we look at a lot more independent, it's a lot more micro level. There is some crossover, but that does not necessarily mean that you can rely on the other. So, for example, in research methods, which is a topic we cover in both, uh, the difference is quite great. So, yeah, there is quite a distinct difference overall.
Great, thank you, Daniel. So yeah, just to build on what Daniel said, the key difference really is that in psychology we're focusing on the individual. So for example, if we're looking at gender, we're looking at why, the causes, the factors that determine the individual coming to identify themselves as male or female. In sociology, when looking at gender, they might be looking at inequality in the workplace. They might be looking at it in the context of education as well. So yeah, there is, I mean, just again, in relation to what Daniel said, there is some overlap in terms of research methods. So that is something that we have to both look at, although there's a greater emphasis on qualitative research methods in sociology. Okay, right. So there's a few messages here about sound. Please let me know if you can't hear me, but I think that's okay now. So if you take 3 sciences and fail one, but pass the other 2. Yeah, I mean, we say ideally 5s in sciences and ideally 5s across the board, but we'd be looking in particular at biology because that obviously sort of links with psychology. So yeah. Um, so how many psychology classes are there in Esher? So we have 15 second year classes and we've got 14 first year classes. So 29 classes in total. Aha! We have it as Emily. Um, um, okay, GCSE and maths grade. So we ask, thank you, John, that's brilliant. There's Daniel. So we ask for a minimum of a grade 4 in GCSE maths. Okay, subjects that would go well with psychology. So Daniel here is studying sociology and biology, and then Emily, you're doing biology and IT. That's right. So biology goes particularly well with psychology, but yeah, I mean, there's a whole range of subjects. We have students doing sort of more humanity type subjects, so history, geography, alongside psychology. English is a good fit as well. But then we've also got students doing, quite a few students doing health and social care or the sport BTEC alongside psychology or PE. So yeah, it does, and quite a few business students as well. So yeah, it does complement lots of different subjects across the college. So I think it really depends what you want to go on to do after college, what you'd like to study at university, what you're thinking about in terms of a career. Yes, psychology does work well with biology and chemistry if you're thinking about medicine. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, entry requirements. So I covered that partly already. So it is so 4s across the board and ideally 5s in science. Okay, so I'm going to just pass this question over to Emily and Daniel because you're just asking in terms of one of you's asking about the overlap between biology and psychology. So Emily, if I pass over to you, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So psychology and biology are quite similar in some ways. I mean, it's quite different for most of the year, but we do cover like biopsychology, which is going over the brain, and you have to understand the biology of the brain, and it links to the other topics in psychology anyways. But it's both in psychology and biology when you cover in grey matter, and it's useful because we learn it in psychology first, so it's quite useful for learning it later on because you'll already be familiar with the content. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Uh, Yeah, so we do look at there's a standalone biopsychology topic on the psychology course, and I'd say that's where there is the greatest overlap. So, for example, at the moment with Emily's class, we're looking at localization of brain function, and that's something they'll be looking at on the biology course, and also things like synaptic transmission. Yes, Megan, there are exams at the end of year one, so there are formal kind of mock exams which help to determine your UCAS predicted grades if you're thinking of applying to university. Questions on the exam papers, there's a real range. So you've got your kind of multiple choice through to more contextualization type questions where you have to apply your knowledge to a given scenario, and also essay questions. So mini essay questions worth 8 marks, and also longer essay questions worth 16. Yes, we do topic assessments. So, pretty much at the end of each topic, we do an assessment, and that often counts towards the progress review reports. Um, so, I think I've covered, yeah. I think I've covered that a little bit well. Yes, you can do psychology if you're doing combined science GCSE, that's no problem. So Sophia, how often would you study in a week? Do you mean in terms of, I think perhaps you mean homework. So I would say you'd get a couple of homeworks each week. Ideally, you want to be spending 5 to 6 hours on sort of private study work outside of lessons. So we aim for 10 hours in total per subject across the week. So that's sort of the goal. So it's just using those private study sessions that will be on your timetable to do that work, that independent study work. So percentage that achieve A star, we had 43 A stars this year out of a cohort of it was just under 300. So yeah, so quite a high percentage. So yeah, 43 out of a cohort. I think it was 290 or just under 290 that sat the exam. So yeah, so we had a good number of A stars this year. So do you need a 5 in chemistry? Yeah, ideally, but we'll be looking at biology in particular. Yes, the subject does work well with business and economics. We do have lots of students doing that. I mean, the mathematical skills that you'll be developing in psychology will kind of, lend themselves to business in particular. Okay, so I'm going to pass this question on to Catherine's question about how much more writing is there in psychology A level compared to GCSE? Um, Actually, no, I'm going to pass this question on to Daniel. So, Daniel, maths. How much of the psychology course content is maths related? So, what's been your experience in terms of maths on the course?
So yeah, in terms of maths, of course, we study a lot of statistical tests. I say a lot. It's really just kind of your Spearman's rank, Spearman's row, a couple of them like that. In terms of memorizing them, in a lot of occasions, we are given the equation, so it's just knowing how to use it. The only one we need to know off by heart is the sign test. So yeah, there's not a great deal of maths, but sometimes it can feel quite advanced. But we get supported really well with it. Of course, there's research methods taught throughout the course, so we have a lot of time to build on them fundamental skills, and of course, get like the best we can at them.
Thanks, Daniel. Um, okay, would you recommend studying psychology if I'm not good at writing essays? Emily, what would you say in response to that question? So, what do you feel in terms of the essay writing component?
I mean, I struggle with writing essays as well, and I haven't really had a problem with it because, I mean, I'm not sure about other schools, but at Isha, we're supported because most of our essays are like 16 markers, and we're supported with how to structure them. And like since the first lesson, we've been told really like how to structure things exactly so that you know the way you're writing it in the best way to get the most marks. So even if you struggle with writing your essays, it shouldn't really be a problem. And I don't think that they really mark based on like the grammar that you're using or spelling. As long as it's like legible, you're gonna get the marks. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Emily. So what are the topics? Daniel, could you give us a bit of an insight into some of the topics you've studied so far on the course?
Yeah, so from day one in psychology, we look at the approaches. So there's a lot of different approaches and kind of different perspectives on psychology as a whole. From that, you move on to, your first research methods, and then you go on to further things such as psychopathology, which has been my favorite so far, which is kind of explaining a lot of mental problems like depression or OCD.
Brilliant, thank you. So our transgender non-binary identities and neurodiversity covered in the content. So we do teach gender as a topic. It's one of the options on paper 3, and we do look at gender dysphoria as part of that topic. So yes. If you didn't study psychology at GCSE, does it set you back? No, I would say we have a handful of students who have studied psychology at GCSE. So, yeah, the majority of students are new to the subject. So, yeah, as teachers, we kind of work on the assumption that students haven't studied it before. So we work from the ground upwards. There is no coursework component. It's 100% examination based. So you'll sit 3 2-hour papers at the end of your second year of the course, which are equally weighted. Oh, sorry, Sophia. Yeah, so how many lessons? So the 4 lessons each week. Each lesson is 1 hour, 5 minutes. So 4 hours, 20. Actually, one of the lessons is slightly longer, 1 hour, 10. So 4 hours, 25 a week per subject. Yes, there's a mix of biology and English, so we have to look at biological explanations for OCD, for example, for addictive behaviour. When we're looking at gender, we have to look at the biological explanations in general, but also when we're looking at gender dysphoria. So yeah, the sort of the nature nurture debate runs through the subject. So we do have to look at those biological influences. No, so it's 10 hours a week per subject, including lesson time. So we recommend 5 to 6 hours of private study. So that's homeworks essentially outside of lessons. Yeah, the maths is I would say it's very much GCSE, and we touched on that already. So if you've sort of coped fairly well with GCSE maths, then you should be absolutely fine with the mathematical requirements on the psychology course. In terms of careers, you perhaps could be thinking about well, can take you in various directions. Teaching, the police, health, a healthcare professional, marketing. It does lend itself to lots of different career paths because you're developing lots of different skills, lots of transferable skills, those mathematical skills, essay writing skills, developing arguments, being able to weigh up evidence, so yeah. Um, we've touched on that. So examples of modules, so psychopathology, where we look at things like OCD, depression and phobias, attachment, where we look at the interaction between infants and caregivers, memory, biopsychology, I've mentioned already, gender, addiction. We do in terms of field trips, we're going to be running some trips as part of the wider skills week, which is being reintroduced this year following COVID. So there will be some trips at the end of the year, just day trips in and around London. Yeah. So 10%, Harriet, of the course, 10% of the marks on the course are awarded for mathematical skills. And in terms of biology, it's probably you've got the standalone biopsychology topic, which is one of the 11 topics studied. You've then got your biological explanations as part of those other topics. So yeah, I guess maybe 30%, I would say, because it is embedded throughout. Um, no, you should be able to cope with the course if you've done foundation science and maths, so that's no problem. Um, okay, GCSE subjects. Yeah, we just focus on the English, maths, and science. That's important in terms of the entry requirements. We don't do any sports psychology. No. Um, no, we don't touch on that, unfortunately, Becky, on the course. So just thinking about Daniel and Emily in terms of what they're going on to do, because some of your questions are about sort of post A level and sort of what you might go on to do, having studied psychology at A level. So Daniel, do you want to just talk a little bit about what your plans are? Because I think that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so in terms of after Isha, I've been looking at doing a degree in criminology, of course, tying in with sociology, subject topics like psychopathology. We do look at kind of deviance from social norms, which is like interest me in terms of a criminal side of it. So yeah, I'll be going on to do that hopefully.
Thank you, Daniel. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about what your plans are?
So at uni, I'm planning on studying psychology. Really interested in neuroscience, which is like the biology and psychology mixed together, but I'm planning on studying a general psychology degree because I'm interested in becoming a clinical psychologist. And that's kind of it, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. So a few more questions have come in. So we don't teach the criminal psychology topic on the A-level course. However, we do run a criminal and forensic psychology complementary studies course, and that's available to first years. So when when you come in to enroll, you'll select a complementary studies course, and that is one of the options. There's no qualification attached to that, but if you are interested in that aspect of psychology, then you can do that alongside the A level. So it's a very popular option. We've got 3 classes this year of that particular complementary study. So yeah, that is something you can study alongside the A level. Oh, Daniel, I think this is a question for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so if this is the just how useful is psychology A level for studying criminology, I would say in terms of the taster sessions I've been to at universities, it has been quite useful. Of course, I mentioned briefly earlier, sociology will look at a society-wide scale. However, when we're knuckling down to a person as an individual, kind of having that foundation knowledge of psychological explanations for some of their behaviors, it has kind of really advantaged me in terms of like some of the people there who aren't taking the course and they're like learning it for the first time. So it has been very useful.
Daniel. Just having a look at some of the earlier questions that I might have missed. So, what would be a good subject to go with economics and psychology? I think it does depend on what your interests are and whether you want to do another essay writing subject or yeah, and what you want to go on to do after college. I mean, I would say perhaps history would be quite a good fit. Um, or maybe politics alongside those 2 subjects. So yeah, but as I say, it does depend on what your interests are and whether you want to do another essay writing subject. Um, yeah, I would say psychology does go well with economics and maths. It's a good combination. Yeah, how many 16 markers are there typically in a paper? It can vary. We have seen past papers where there have been, so with 4 sections on a paper, where there's been a 16 mark on 3 of those 4 sections. So yeah, as I say, it does vary, but yeah, there can be. I haven't seen as many as 4, but there have been 3 on a 2-hour paper. I think I've covered the results. So A stars, we had 43 this year. It was about 15% A stars. A star to B was 72%. An A star to C, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I think it was in the 80s. So yeah. So yeah, really strong results this year, which was great. Is there anything you find more challenging about the subject? So Daniel, anything that you perhaps find challenging?
I'd say probably the most challenging thing which I've come into contact is very much the first term of it. Of course, it's for majority of people, it's a whole new challenge that we're facing. Um, so, you know, understanding the approaches, whilst it took me a little bit of time. Some people did understand it straight away. But it took me a little bit of time. But once I kind of got over that and kind of understood them through and through, it really has helped me with the rest of the course because once you have that foundation knowledge, um, it's so applicable to everything else. So yeah, I'd probably say learning it as a new subject has been the most challenging part.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny. Emily?
I would say the first time was also the most difficult for me because I I think that the first subjects that we did were a little bit less enjoyable than the rest. But like once you get through with them and you are strong with like your knowledge on them, it's applicable throughout the
Yeah.
entirety of the course. And it's it's not long. But I find other than that, it's probably the all of the case studies that you have to remember or the different like experiments. But I think that for me, the easiest way for remembering them is just flashcards. But yeah, they're not too difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, as I said earlier, we do sort of work on the assumption that, students haven't studied psychology before. So we, work from the bottom up. So we like to lay the foundations, teach approaches first, because that does run through the rest of the course. And also in that first term, teach a chunk of research methods as well, because that helps later on in terms of evaluating research studies. If you understand terms like validity and reliability, then you're going to be in a better position later on in the course. So we do start with those topics. We think about the sequencing and yeah, just kind of build the students up from there. Um, okay, if a student isn't hugely confident, yeah, I mean, I think because it is exam based, that is a consideration. If you are someone who maybe does find exams more challenging, it might be worth thinking more about sort of a BTEC course where there is that combination of exams and coursework. But we do lots of practice in terms of exam technique, exam questions, so trying to build confidence over the course of the 2 years. So it might be something that just sort of need to chip away at and develop. Yeah, I mean, as I say, Sophia, we do work on the assumption that students are new to studying psychology. So yeah, I think as Emily and Daniel have pointed out, that first term I think can be a little bit of a steep learning curve, but it's once you've got those foundations, from that point on, I think it starts to all slot into place. How many exams? So it's 3 2-hour papers at the end of the second year, but we do mini assessments along the way, internal assessments that don't count towards your final grade. But yeah, as I said earlier, we tend to do an assessment at the end of each topic, and then at the end of the first year, there are progression or sort of formal mock exams. So you sort of have that experience of sitting a longer paper under exam conditions in the sports hall. Oh, thank you, Jenny. You've answered that question. Okay. So we had 72% A star to B grades this year. Yes, Catherine, we do have some students studying art alongside psychology, art, photography, um, media as well. Is it classed? We are part of the science division here at the college, so yeah, it is classed as a science. But yeah, obviously there are does overlap with the humanities, but yeah, it's classed as a science and it's considered to be a science by universities actually. Um, would you recommend? Yeah, studying psychology alongside business. We do have lots of students doing that combination, and lots of students studying it alongside PE. There's a bit of an overlap there. So they look at some of the, they look at models of memory, for example, and social learning theory as well on the PE course that we look at on the psychology course. Yes, Gustus, we do. We're going to be doing some trips at the end of this year as part of the wider skills week. So that's towards the end of the summer term. Yes, and they will be day trips in London. Yeah. So we're looking at running trips to the Freud Museum, to the Museum of the Mind, Bethlehem. Also, well, we'd like to do something on site as well. So the Brain Day, which we've done in the past pre-COVID, so where students are able to dissect brains, which is yeah, really good day. So yeah, we'll be doing something on site as well as trips out and about. Yes, it does work well with media studies. I think I've answered that question as well. I think we've only got a few minutes left, haven't we? So I'll try to get through as many of these as I can. Okay. Is it helpful for law? Yes, absolutely. I mean, just going back to what Emily was saying earlier in terms of learning research studies, learning lots of facts, that's something that a transferable skill that will help in terms of learning cases for law. So yeah, I would say it works well if that's what you're thinking of going on to. I've answered that question. Yes, psychology and sociology do work really well together. Daniel's studying the two alongside one another. Yes, there are some, Lorna, multiple choice questions, some short answer questions, 4 mark, 6 mark questions, and then of course your mini essay questions worth 8 marks and your longer 16 mark essay questions. Okay, I think, yes, you are taught lots of exam technique. We really do focus on prepping you for those exams and giving you as much exposure to exam questions throughout the course as possible. Okay, I think, oh, Clara, with architecture, yeah, you could do it. And I think there might be some subjects that might be a better fit in terms of maybe sort of, yeah, graphics and so on. But yeah, I mean, I have had students study psychology who've gone on to study architecture. So yeah, you can't, I wouldn't rule it out completely. Should you say out of biology? I would say biology complements psychology better than chemistry. Yeah. Yes, we do have multiple teachers. There are 8 of us in the department. We do have a few part-time members of staff and staff who have other responsibilities in the college. So yeah, so there are 8 of us in total. Okay, I think I answered that. Okay, lovely. Thank you, Clara. Okay. A-star percentage, we had 43 A-stars. It's about 15%, so we're just under 300 sat the exam in the summer. Okay, I think that might be. Oh, okay, lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. I think the next session starts now. So thank you so much for joining and hope that has helped in terms of making the decision as to whether to study psychology or not. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks. Bye.